I live in Florida and here Brugmansia grows not naturally but a lot of people have it in their yards. My friends had told me that they tried it out and they totally wigged and were talking to people from work and asking people shit like if they wanted sauce with their chicken nuggets who weren't there, so naturally I was amped to try out these flowers. But on my self-destructive extra long period of mental instability and fatigue from tripping on shrooms and smoking embalming fluid-soaked pot, that I didn't bother to think or calculate that if a fully grown man twice my weight is put down by only a couple flowers, that maybe I should take it easy when trying this stuff out. I found myself upon the plant while my friends begged me to get back in the car because I just about dove out. Mind you, at this time I was at no less than a slightly buzzed state. I snatched 5 whole fresh flowers, which I guess around here is quite a legendary amount, especially for someone my size because of the potency of this particular plant. I gobbled them down to the green in the car and they didn't hit me until we got to the mall. I cruised through the mall nonchalantly, noting an intensified drunken feeling and that the ground seemed uncomfortably close to eye level. I also got the worst cotton mouth of my life. Me and my friends departed, not before another friend of mine saw me and heard what I had done and demanded that I be taken to the hospital, but I felt fine at the time. We went to Taco Bell instead and I devoured a bag of those cinnamon twisty things. Then we departed again to a female friend of mine's. I couldn't focus on what was happening outside of the car, I just stared at the dashboard. When we got to her house, my girlfriend was there and she noticed that I was acting strangely. I would look away, ask where she was, then gaze over and say, "There you are," repeatedly. I got an increasingly hot fever, which got somewhere near 105, and I found it hard to breathe. My friend who had been driving and my girlfriend guided me to the car and took me to my mom's house. On the way my ears got really sensitive and I asked for the radio to get turned down, but no one heard me and it felt like I was screaming it. The driver pointed and told me, "This is the volume, but you can just go ahead and have fun." Which at this point I couldn't understand English completely, so I just kept hitting buttons on the dashboard and we finally arrived to my mom's with the windshield wipers swishing and the AC on as hot as it would go, but the volume still at the same level. When we got there, my friend who had been driving told my girlfriend what to do to help me and to call the hospital if I got any worse, and away he went to work. I was stumbling around and I fell and bashed my neck and the side of my head on the corner of my closet door jamb. It bled a little. Then she tried to get me into a cold tub after checking my temperature again, and as she was taking off my clothes in the bathroom I couldn't grasp that she wanted to help me, and I kept asking why she wanted to have sex in the bathroom. She panicked and called my mom and they took me to the hospital. There I was wheeled around in a computer chair. They had no more wheelchairs in the ER. They put me in a room and started working on me. I got hysterical and annihilated a room full of large male nurses and 2 police officers, ripping the curtain to the right of my bed halfway down and knocking a cop down onto a bunch of tools and a whole wall of sterile towels to my left. They restrained me and put a catheter in, then tried to pump me full of charcoal, which I choked on, and when they pulled the hose I spewed it out exorcist style onto everyone, even my girlfriend's mom. Then they told me to drink all of this nasty laxative shit that was green. Then I peeked and without distractions my mind fully slipped into a separate dimension. The lights that were on me were shining out everywhere like a hurricane of colors all around. Kind of like someone put kaleidoscopes over my eyes. Then I saw my hand, unbound, with a giant quill feather pen that was vividly purple. I drew all over my hospital robe with it and beautiful flowers bloomed across the fabric as I touched it. I looked around and I saw my girlfriend to my right and my friend who had driven me earlier to my right, which was really my mom, but her face looked so distorted I couldn't tell, so I spent about 20 minutes trying to fix his gay hair because he looked so silly with long reddish-brown hair before the face returned to having my mother's features. Then my blood pressure thingy on my arm kept inflating and it sounded like my cell phone vibrating, which I had lost a week earlier, so I screamed on and on to my girlfriend things like, "At least pick it up and see who it is. And answer the damned phone." Then all of a sudden I found myself amongst the swirling colors even more intensely, and in my hand was a giant red telephone. I put it up to my ear and had a conversation with it for about 45 minutes. I looked up after my girlfriend, who never left my side, shook me awake from my delusion, and she had a giant goat head. Like the kind you see that is just way too cheesy to be real, like a team mascot for example. She had matching hoof gloves on too. She was talking in some sort of gibberish. They transferred me to a different hospital for observation and took out my catheter quite painfully. The hospital people were very nice, perhaps because they didn't think I would make it. The goat returned with my food that I didn't remember ordering, and I was too terrified to eat it because I thought the goat mascot man might have poisoned it. Then I was transferred to a mental institution because I wouldn't come down from my trip. They assigned me a psychologist from the staff who observed what I did the first 24 hours of being there. Still in my world of swirling colors, I watched the wrong video to watch when you trip, Fern Gully. The television melted and crumbled apart right in front of me and I turned in my seat to complain to my psychiatrist person loudly, "Do you fucking people know that your television just melted?" Which she recorded calmly onto her notepad. The walls crawled with insects at night when the lights went out, and sometimes I'd see a flash of a goat's tail out of the corner of my eye, just enough to get me scared, as I slowly came out of the strange state of mind. It took me a week to fully recover from the trip and my vision was messed up from the second day to about the fourth. Overall, if I hadn't taken so much, I think it would have been a lot more pleasurable, but oh well. I got annihilated and saw things that blew my mind and made me speak in whispered tongues at super speeds for a week, all locked up until lunchtime and recess in the crazy house. This plant is brutal, and is not something to fuck around with. My entire journey with Brugmansia was not to get high, or to trip, but to enlighten myself and others. One should never try anything without knowing the possible outcomes. Furthermore, this was my first time using Brugmansia. As an avid tripper, I made the decision to try it without a sitter. This could have turned out terribly bad, but luckily it didn't. I actually enjoyed most of the experience. It really changes the way I think. What's so dangerous about Brugmansia and Datura is the thought process gets jumbled and I think that I'm thinking normally. Let me tell you, I wasn't, by any means. Now for the goodies. Preparation. 6 Brugmansia leaves. All mature, about 7 by 15 inches each. 5 paper coffee filters. They get clogged by this mixture and you have to switch them out. 1 Brugmansia blossom. Mature, pink. 1 milk jug. 1 large cup. That won't melt with boiling water added. 1 pot for heating the mixture. 1 cup of sugar. 1 funnel. Cut the plant matter into shreds with a pair of scissors. Put 0.125 gallons of water, filled to that bottom line on a milk jug, in the pot on the stove. Turn the stove on high until the water is about to boil, then lower the heat to prevent boiling. Then add the shredded plant matter, which should cook for approximately 20 to 25 minutes. This mixture will now be strained through a few coffee filters into the cup. When finished straining the liquid, put all of the pulp into a filter, this may take 2 filters, into the cup. Using the funnel, pour a cup of sugar into the milk jug. Pour the mixture from the cup back into the pot and turn the heat on again. But don't boil it, just get it really hot. Using the funnel, pour the heated liquid into the milk jug, cap the jug, shake it up. You will need to release the pressure a few times during this process. Remove the cap. Let this substance cool down naturally, don't put it in your refrigerator or icebox. Dosage. I had less than half of the mixture above, and it made me hallucinate pretty decently, but as you read, took a while to kick in. Friday, September 30th 2005. 21:45. Drank 1 coffee cup mug of tea / approximately 3/4 cups / 21:58. I can tell that I'm not sober, but the effects are not very strong as of this moment. Feeling as though my eyes are trying to look in 2 different directions, but only in slight proportions. Cottonmouth is starting to take effect as well, but once again, only slightly. 22:04. My sense of balance seems slightly distorted. I am not quite stumbling, but I'm uncertain as to whether or not I would be able to walk a straight line. I am noticing that I do not feel the heavy feeling that I have read about. 22:05. I am planning to drink another cup at 22:45 if I feel it necessary. 22:08. Heart rate is increased, and it feels as though my pupils are dilating. They don't appear to be dilated, I just checked, but instead of feeling heavy, I am beginning to feel light. 22:16. My pupils are beginning to dilate, or at least appear to be. 22:19. I am beginning to feel tired. I was expecting this. I am going to fight sleep, at least long enough to drink another cup of this wonderful, so far, tea. Also, Cottonmouth is beating me with a whip right now. It feels like I hung my open mouth window out the car window on a 200-mile journey, in other words. It's dry as hell. 22:33. I just used the restroom and found that my urine didn't flow as freely as it normally would. I had to force my urine out, which made me paranoid because I have read that many people have urinated and defecated on themselves without even knowing it while on this trip, and boy was I straining. Luckily, I walked away clean. 22:39. I drank most of another cup of the tea. 22:45. It's been 1 hour since I first consumed the tea. I am now seeing odd hallucinations. There is a face that's multicolored coming from the corner of my room. It just comes out of the shadow for a second, then returns. I can't make out who the face is due to its colorful nature. The face is black for the most part, as if its face were see-through, but its facial features are neon lights. There are waves of green and yellow illuminations flowing across my ceiling. The patterns beneath, higher than, the coloring look like doily patterns that are morphing and whatnot. The walls look as if someone splattered little pink, green, and blue drops all over them. 2247. I am beginning to feel a little sleepy, but restless at the same time. No jitters and no out of the ordinary visuals. By out of the ordinary I mean things that I see anyway. I have visuals all the time, even sober. I remember saying as a teen that it would be cool to hallucinate all the time as if I were on acid. I still love the hallucinations, but they can get annoying. Remember that bit of information. It does get annoying, not all the time, but it does. Especially the auditory hallucinations. I hear people whispering, but can't find them. I hear people call my name, but they're nowhere to be found. If you had that happen constantly, I am sure you would find it annoying as well. 2251. I finished off the cup of tea that I began drinking at 2239. I have now consumed 1.5 cups of liquid Brugmansia. 2322. I took a shower and I noticed a few strange things. On the way to the shower from my room I noticed that my equilibrium was off-balanced, though I was thinking what I thought to be clearly. I could see myself walking all drunk-like, yet I felt mentally sober, much like ether. Once I was in the shower there was a folded and twisted washcloth. But my mind envisioned this rag as a chunk of a person's face torn off and set there with the eye still in the socket. This eye wouldn't quit making eye contact with me. I was shocked at first when I saw it, and I jumped. I don't usually jump even if I'm scared to death. I don't know what made me jump, it was merely a washcloth. I knew this because I noticed it before it became an eyeball and ripped flesh. The second oddity that I noticed is that one of the screws holding the shower crown in, the board running along the walls at the ceiling, grew legs and started sniffing around the shower. It appeared to be a spider, but when I got closer to take a look, the legs dissipated, they faded out until they were gone. And there was the screw, in all of its glory. Another strange thing is that my hands were red in the shower. Actually, they're still red. They look as though one would if they took a large dose of niacin. Also, where the shower wall meets the floor there is some writing, but it's hard to read, and when I get closer it fades away. I managed to read part of this, which reads, "You are not." I have no idea as to the meaning of this. Even though I have never been afraid of the dark I was on Brugmansia. I wasn't like so scared that I wouldn't walk into the dark, but I was really nervous about doing so. I've eaten 27 hits of acid before, Alice in Wonderland, and went to a dark room intentionally to really get my mind ticking. The people I was with, also veteran trippers, only took 4 hits each, and wigged out. The reason I'm telling you this is because I don't scare easy, even when tripping extremely hard. This mystical plant made me nervous about walking in the dark, who knows what it may do to you. I suggest avoiding dark rooms altogether. 013. I laid back on my bed and watched all sorts of things fly by. These hallucinations are unlike any that I've had. On acid, the visuals are smooth and constant. With Brugmansia, they don't move quite as often, but when they do, they snap into place. Small things do move smoothly on Brugmansia, but they move so fast I don't really get a good look at them. Everything is breathing, but not as much as I would have expected. My chest of drawers is trying to walk away right now, but the carpet's grip is too strong. I know this isn't really happening, but it's quite amusing to watch. 08:11/. Well, I went to sleep, with some difficulty in lieu of the fact that I couldn't get comfortable. I was starting to worry myself that perhaps I took too much because all of a sudden I was feeling very strange, completely out of place. But I have awakened, and I am still tripping. Not quite as hard, but still am. I had an awful taste in my mouth so I brushed my teeth. My stomach was feeling a little queasy so I have eaten a bowl of cereal. 11 o'clock. Yep, still tripping, and there appears to be smoke coming from my desk. The smoke keeps flying by my face, and I say to myself, oh yay, I need to smoke that cigarette before it's dead, but when I reach down to grab it, I realize that I don't even have an ashtray in here right now, let alone a burning cigarette. I've already done this several times today. My pupils are still pretty dilated, and the cotton mouth is still present, but not very bad. I just looked out my bedroom door because of the music and I wanted to know who was messing with my stereo. I'm the only one here, so my radio shouldn't have changed stations. When I opened my door there stood Sherlock Holmes. Such an odd person to see. From all of my research you tend to run into people you used to know and such. I've never met Mr. Holmes. But he's been to my house now. By the way, there wasn't any music playing to start with. As I am typing this out, my door is attempting to close itself, but I have it propped open with my shoes. I think my door might be getting mad because it's breathing heavily now. No, I do not actually think my door is mad, I know it's only a hallucination. 11:37. Trippin' like a villain. This text is turning shades of gray, red, orange, yellow, blue, and violet, but only certain words. The problem is, I can't tell which ones are highlighted by color because they keep changing. The color seems to be playing musical chairs with the music that isn't playing, but's okay. I hear the music too. I know it's not on, but I hear it nonetheless. I am unable to read anything unless I hold it at arm's length. When I try to read small print, having to hold it closer, my eyes don't seem to want to point in the same direction, much like astigmatism. 12:30. Still tripping. I am semi-watching a spider build a spider web across the bottom of my monitor. The reason I say semi-watching is because if I look directly at her or her web, it disappears. I am going to go ahead and post this. The trip is still going steady, though I feel much more comfortable now. I hope this gives some people some insight as to the effects of this mystical plant. Okay. 12:40. Something under my bed just growled. It was quite a sinister growl. I know it's only in my head, so I am going to ignore it. Also a penny just came out from behind my monitor and landed on top of it, but without sound. Sneaky pennies. My walls look as thought they're being projected onto a backdrop and the wind is blowing it around. And they're assuming a pink-red color.
(1 p.m.) There are many Brugmansia trees that grow around in my neighborhood. I had heard that an experience of Hell's Bells, Brugmansia, was an awesome trip and that I would love it. So me and my friend decided one day we should trip out on Hell's Bells. We both had no knowledge of how many flowers we should pick off the tree, so I picked 24 flowers around 12 to 18 inches each flowers. 1:30 p.m. We took the flowers to my friend's house and chopped all of them up as finely as we could, put them in a pot of water and boiled the water for 30 minutes. After the water was boiled we took a screen and put it on top of the water bottle opening so we could just drain the liquid into the empty water bottle. We thought it was best not to drink the chopped up part of the flowers. After we had done that the water bottle was extremely hot so we decided to keep it in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes, and then hid the bottle under his bed. 9 p.m. We didn't decide to drink the Hell's Bells, Brugmansia, until my friend's mom went to bed. Throughout the whole day we had been drinking and we picked up 4 grams of some pretty good quality chronic. 9:30 p.m. My friend's mom had finally passed out, so we took the bottle, and we were making sure we were ready to do this and we both were. So we each drank half the water bottle and immediately our pupils became dilated. About 5 minutes after I drank the liquid my mouth became very dry and I had an extremely upset stomach, probably from the rum I had drank earlier that day, and ran to the bathroom and puked red chunks all over the toilet. I felt much better after throwing up but I wasn't exactly tripping yet and I didn't know what the problem was. We still had about 2 grams of weed left so we packed 3 bowls until finally around the same time we just stopped for no reason and started wandering around my friend's house. 10 p.m. At this time I had very blurry vision and wasn't hallucinating yet but was basically more stoned than I have ever been in my life. My friend and I met back up several minutes later not remembering why we stopped blazing and we went on the computer. We both could still focus but at this point it was very hard. 10:30 p.m. My friend's sister went into the bathroom, only 12 years old, and screamed when she saw chunks of barf on the ground and in the sink and asked who threw up. My friend told me to shut up and not tell her that I threw up, so she went into her mom's room and woke her up. We thought oh shit we're caught now. My friend's mom looked at us and asked us what the fuck have you guys been doing, both of your fucking pupils are huge. My idiot friend still told me to keep my mouth shut and not say what we had been doing. At this time all the lights were on in the house but everything seemed very gray and dark. It was very hard to sit down. I remember that I kept wandering around and my friend's mom had to keep sitting me down and asking me where I was going. She kept trying to interrogate us and told us we were both very disoriented and that if we didn't confess what we had done, she would call my father. I still didn't confess, and at that point I was swaying my body on the couch, and she said, "Nick, you're tripping me out, man," which me and my friend thought was extremely hilarious for some reason, and we cried, we were laughing so hard. 11 p.m. My friend's mom called my dad and told him that me and my friend are on some type of hallucination and that I needed to be picked up. Now from this point of time I can only describe the hallucinations that I remember, but I don't remember what actions I had done, so I will tell you what my dad and brother had told me what I was doing. 11:30 p.m. I remember my friend's mom calling my dad, and at that time, I ran out of her house and I was in my boxers and socks, no shirt or pants, just boxers and socks, wandering around the streets for God who knows why. My dad searched the neighborhood and found me on a busy street wandering around in my socks and asked me what the fuck I was doing. I don't remember wandering around the neighborhood, but this is what my dad told me I had done. He said, "Nick, you had no fucking clue who I was and you didn't even know how to open the fucking car door." Around 12 p.m. to 8 a.m., my dad took me home, and I remember when I came home I started hallucinating heavily, seeing very realistic things popping up out of nowhere. My dad asked me if I had been on belladonna, acid, PCP, mushrooms, etc. I told him I had only been drinking and smoking, and he kept me in my room. I remember when I got into my room I saw a few of my friends who weren't really there. Everything was still gray and dark, and at that point I was talking to my friends Andy, John, and Nate, and I even set up beds for them to sleep in because I thought they were sleeping at my house. My dad walked in and asked me who I was talking to, and I said, "Well, obviously, who does it look like I'm talking to?" He looked at me like I was a complete idiot and said that I needed to stay in my room and not dare leave it. I later saw my mom in my room. She wasn't there though, and she led me in the closet, where I jumped into the closet and closed the doors. My dad had told me the next day that he found me in my closet talking to my mom, and I had my cell phone charger in my hand. I kept seeing my brother walking into my room and he was pointing at me and laughing, and I was completely scared at this point, laying under my covers and trying to get the visions out of my head. I would look over the covers to see if anyone was there, and my friends would be sitting there just staring at me, and I would talk to them and scream, "Get the fuck out of my house." At around 1 a.m. the police called my house and talked to my dad to ask if I was okay. I guess my friend's mom had to take my friend to the hospital and gave the cops all my information. My dad said I didn't need to go to the hospital and that he was keeping an eye on me every few minutes. At around 3 a.m. my mom finally came home from work. She got the news that I was heavily hallucinating, walked into my room and asked me why there were beds set up, and I repeated to her, "Mom, be quiet, Andy's sleeping." Between 3 and 3:30 a.m., I was still seeing people. At around 3:45 a.m. I think I had to get up to go to the bathroom, and this was by far the scariest thing that has ever happened to me in my life. As I was peeing, out of nowhere about 15 to 20 grayish-brown spiders that were pretty small popped up in the middle of the air and were forming spider webs all around my hands. I was terrified and tried to bat the spiders away, but they weren't leaving. I ran into my room extremely frightened, where I came to find my imaginary brother sitting in the closet staring at me. I don't exactly remember what happened or what I saw for the rest of the night. I think I fell asleep, but at 9 a.m. I woke up. I went to the bathroom to pee and I looked in the mirror to find my pupils still dilated, and I was trying to remember what had happened the night before. Something very scary that happens to me on Brugmansia is that often I see people out of the corner of my eye for about 2 minutes straight. So I am shaking my head left and right constantly to see what it is that is standing out in the corner of my eye. I had very blurry vision. My mom and dad finally woke up and I confessed everything to both of them. The stories my dad still tells me about what I was doing seem actually to be very funny. I really wished that I had recorded myself on a video camera or something so all my friends could get a laugh. My mom went to the local nursery and asked about the flower and found out that I had taken way too many flowers and could have easily died. It was a somewhat fun but frightening experience. After I did Hell's Bells and told my friends about the experience and told them specifically not to do it, About 3 friends tried it anyways and all ended up getting caught. They first tried doing 4 flowers one night, then 10 the next night. After they did 10 flowers they had been caught. One friend had been arrested for peeing on his neighbor's truck. And now I know not to do it again.
I was going through a bad time. My wife had left me. I was stuck with the kids, no money, no food, no transportation. I had used shamanic drumming before to discover certain things, and I decided to do it again, but with a little help. I had a large shrub of Brugmansia sanguinea I had grown from a cutting. I made a tea, and not knowing a proper dosage, guessed at 2 leaves and 2 reddish-orange flowers. I went to bed, and tried to do some drumming. After a while, I felt the drug coming on, quite strong, but for some reason, I fought it. I fell asleep. I had terrifying dreams of being chased by a demon who kept smashing my face into the projectors in a movie theater projection booth where I worked. I woke up at one point, from pain, as I ran into the kitchen counter at full speed, which smacked me down, and I crashed on my back on the hard floor, no hands to cushion me whatever. I gasped from the shock and pain and passed out again. That's all I remember. When I awoke the next morning, I felt very strange. There was blood on the sheets, my legs were cut up, some nasty cuts on my forehead. My son stood at the foot of the bed, staring at me. He looked at me strangely and said, "Dad, I think you need to come into the living room." I followed him and stared aghast at the carnage. A large plate glass window, about 4 feet by 8 feet, had been smashed. It was not safety glass, there were ominous daggers of glass. It seems I had gone through it, fortunately knees first, or I would have been decapitated. I had torn the back door off its hinges, same thing with the clothes dryer. What happened? I asked him. He said I went crazy during the night, they didn't know why. The 3 kids cowered in their room as I ran back and forth through the house, smashing full speed into walls, evidently at the same time as my dreams of being chased by the demon. I was yelling and saying strange things. I stood in the shower with my clothes on and wept. I seemed intent on destroying myself, and did the aforementioned damage to the window and door. I went to check myself in the mirror. I looked like a Martian, my blue-green eyes were completely black, like those guys infected by the alien virus in the X-Files. And I was cut up very badly. Do not try this stuff. Maybe under controlled circumstances with an experienced shaman it would be a different experience, but I could have been killed, and it was truly the most frightening experience of my life. Part of the reason I wanted to visit the Amazon was to be able to meet with an actual shaman, so I could get some personal insight into their activities. It was convenient, then, when the guy who approached me in Coca, Ecuador claimed to be one. I rather doubted this at first because anybody could claim this to hook their tourist bait. Deciding it did not matter either way, I went with his tour of the Amazon. 2 other passengers, Anita from Norway and Diana from Denmark, had signed on to take the tour also. Within the first hour of the boat ride up the Napo River, I openly asked the shaman if there were any special plants that he used in his rituals. Much to my delight, his response was there was one particular hallucinogenic plant named Huanto which was used for divination, seeing the future. Without having to ask, he inquired as to whether or not I might like to give it a try because it was growing near his son's house where we were going. I agreed and mentioned this to the girls. They also wanted to give it a go, neither of which had any experience with anything like this. I was nervous, however, when he said we could do it tonight at camp. Diuresis, would it not be better done tomorrow during the day? I asked. The response was no, this was something better done at night. Still unsure as to why, I accepted the situation and we took about 6 or 7 larger leaves and stems from an insect-bitten plant with us deeper into the jungle. That night after supper and stories, a brew was made and he presented the 3 of us with a cup of Huanto. We inquired as to whether or not we could add sugar to make the not particularly bad-tasting brew better. He stated that it would lessen the effect, so we drank the earthy tea straight. Poco a poco, little by little, he asked us to drink. We chatted as we drank the tea, and he asked us to think of what we wanted answers to. I wanted to know what I should do when I returned to California after my trip. About 3/4 of the way through my tea, I began to feel the drug. A lightness in my head was telling me that things were changing. I finished the tea early and he remarked as to indicate that I might have drank too much too quickly. Anita wanted to know what I was feeling. I mentioned that I felt sometimes I was off in the jungle and sometimes I was here. The shaman nodded as if he understood. Diana only got about halfway through her tea and she stopped. I considered drinking the rest of hers, but it was a good thing that I did not, for a strong sense of power was coming over me. A great wave of ecstasy to the point where it was too much. It was too good to the point of painful. I started to twitch my legs and jitter them uncontrollably. I remember thinking that if I have 8 hours of this then I am in big trouble. My heart was palpitating rapidly and my throat was bone dry. I started to laugh hysterically for maybe a half an hour. Anita was laughing with me. Everybody was laughing. The shaman and his son were watching over us. I did not understand why until later. I remember trying to get up and move my leg over the bench I was sitting on. I had to pick up my leg with my hands to be able to move it. I tried to emerge. I weighed a ton and fell back immediately to the bench. My mind was swirling. I was leaving this world and entering the realm of the spirits. I collapsed on my hands. What happened after this was a mishmash of events. I continuously tried to get up and walk away. I spun around and every time I stopped the shaman was there directly in front of me. I could not shake him. It was as if every time I tried to get away he was there. He sat me back down. I could not talk. I was having profound thoughts which I could not finish or tell anyone. I was slurring my speech like a drunk. After an hour and a half, I went to the side of the deck and threw up everything I had in me. We had eaten a light meal before the tea, but I vomited what seemed to be an unlimited amount. I fell to the floor and when the shaman found me I was emerging in a completely different world. He helped me back to the bench. The hallucinations were like nothing I have ever experienced. In essence, I took existing objects and painted new objects on top of them. Sticks became snakes and people changed into new people. What I wanted to create was visually before my eyes for varying periods of time. I crashed to the ground a lot, and Anita and I both crawled around like babies until we both had enough strength to stand. Later I found out that the reason why we did not take this drug during the day, and it all makes sense now, is because you are supposed to sit in meditation and journey. I fought the drug trying to use it differently. For 6 more hours we did and saw strange things. I wandered around introducing myself to everyone over and over because I thought in my mind they were different people. People were showing up all the time as if it were a hotel. It was not. It was the middle of nowhere. This was the period where I did not realize that I was hallucinating and everything to me was completely real. I was in no pain, just delusional. It was just like non-lucid dreaming. Anita asked where the discotheque was and the shaman's son told her that it was over there in the jungle. She believed him. She thought the nearest town was only 2 blocks away when it was many miles. For me, a couple showed up, who did not exist, and I remember trying to seduce the pretty girl away from her boyfriend. It was a big party, and I was continually meeting new people. There was what I saw and felt, and what everyone else saw that I could not remember. I was smoking invisible cigarettes. I was using a flashlight like a machine gun. In fact, they nicknamed me Rambo the next day. I was punching the air and fighting with spirits. Anita and Diana saw me get up from the table, turn around, and say, "Oh, there you are," as if I had been looking for them for a while. I remember asking where my watch was. Somebody told me the shaman's son had it. I asked him for it and he told me it was broken from swimming and he would give it to me tomorrow. My first thought was, okay, but why not now? Later when I saw him wearing my headlamp I thought he was a liar and a thief and I was going to get my watch back tomorrow no matter what. My watch was waterproof after all. Anita and I kept losing things in our mind, and slowly but surely someone was taking all our stuff. Some lady stole Anita's imaginary pink shoes. I thought somebody took my beautiful imaginary tapestry. Anita kept speaking in Norwegian and I kept saying, "I don't speak German." She answered me in Norwegian that neither did she. Not knowing what she was saying we went over this over and over. Apparently I threw a bunch of napkins all over the floor and walked around with the plastic bag afraid of littering. Anita tried to eat a napkin like a hamburger. As I was coming out of it, I could see Anita still tripping hard. She was wearing a rubber boot on one foot, and a hiking boot on the other. She kept trying to be sneaky and get into my bed fearing the same area Diana was in because she had a snake's head. I was laughing my ass off in the wee hours of the morning. I climbed into bed with a corpse, but by now knew it was a hallucination and shrugged it off. I talked all night long. I remember doing it. I kept that up all night long. I never do that. The next day I could not focus on things up close. It is one of the side effects. My pupils stayed big for 2 days. The shaman told me that he had never seen anybody get off so hard as me on the normal dose, 2 leaves and 6 inches of stem. Anita actually enjoyed her experience. She felt that she had met her protector, a soldier in one of her visions. I am still not exactly sure what I got except a good laugh for the next couple of days. We were quite safe with the shaman and his son watching over us. I think that I was just not given enough direction on how to use the drug properly and was too tired before I took it. I would do it again, believe it or not. So, how about this for someone's first trip like poor Anita? My God.
The indigenous healers were teaching me about their lives and medicine in a small village deep in the rainforest. I showed absolutely no interest in ingesting anything, and unlike vacationing trippers, had never had any intention of even trying ayahuasca in the rainforest. However, after weeks of instruction and preparation, including ayahuasca ceremonies, my new teachers decided that I was prepared and should participate in a final ceremony using a plant they call maicuia. Only after returning to my country did I finally figure out what maicuia was in English. I was the only foreigner in their village. Some background information: a few days before I had been stalked by jaguars for 4 hours during a night hike, so that was fresh in my mind. This is what I wrote in my journal early that day. We have to fast after breakfast. F and I are going to ingest maicuia, floribundio. E and J are going to ingest ayahuasca. We will pass the night in the jungle, taking hammocks to sleep in. They tell me that F and I will lose our 5 senses for the night and we will have visions of the past and of the future. I am ready. It does not scare me. The only thing that gives me fear is being without my senses where there are jaguars like those that stalked us 4 nights ago. But, we will be 4 people, and they know the rainforest, the plants, everything. It will be a good night. Tomorrow I will have to rest for the whole day as all the broken connections of my nerve system reconnect. This is a short excerpt from my journal several days later, when I had regained enough vision to write. We ask the old stone our favors before we drink. We both ask for good visions and direction before swallowing the greenish concoction. I wander off and sit on a fallen log. F wanders off in the opposite direction. After an hour or more watching the darkness fall around me, I decided that the plant has not worked and perhaps it is because I am not ready. Marching back to the village, alone and with no light, I meet E, who is on his way to take care of us. He says I must come back with him to the mountain. I insist on going back to the village and bed, as nothing is happening. Then we both hear it again. The 2 jaguars. Far away, but coming closer. That settles it. I am heading back to the village. He stands silently as I go and retrieve F, lug him out of his hammock and slip back down the mountain. There is another small post like the one on the mountain, and there we stop. You cannot go back to the village. It is forbidden for you to go there after you have ingested maicuia, says E. Just then, a large black jaguar, tall as E's shoulder, flies toward us in the night. His spear is flung to the side and somehow gashes his right shoulder open. They struggle in my dim lantern light. E ends up killing the monster with his bare hands in spite of the wound. The lantern lights begins dimming. I think the battery light is going out. My battery wasn't dying, my eyesight was. My vision was so dim there was no point in turning on a light. I think F must be in a maicuia coma now. 2 more jaguars arrive. We should fight these 2 and run to the village, I say. We can't. First, I am injured. You are weak, and you and F must stay here for the night after taking our sacred plant. My eyesight's dimming, your wound will be more of a detriment as the pain and stiffness set in, and look. More. Sure enough, 2 more pairs of gleaming eyes, crunching up slowly, watching us, but hesitating as they see the great dead cat at E's feet. I don't think about why the maicuia isn't working. I am busy calculating and trying to stay calm. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. E calls. I've never known so many jaguars to pass through our territory. This doesn't sound like happy news. And I have bigger worries than thinking about how the jaguars came to be there. Then was the first time I thought, what if this isn't real? I am dreaming in my bed back in the village, and all I must do is wake up. I throw myself on a hammock, fall asleep, and wake up, still on that hammock. So this wasn't a dream. And my little snooze hadn't helped. More cats were circling, 5 or 6. I tried to rouse F, but he'd only half smile, mumble in his language, and turn over. And he was gone. Out of nowhere came human voices, a woman and a few children bringing food for he and his overnight stay. Climbing down from the village. I tried to tell them they must not go on. They must turn back. The woman refuses, but hearing the crackle of the jaguars and seeing the large prey of he, she decides to wait down at this post for his return. To my dismay, her children throw some blankets on the bamboo floor, no walls, half-finished hut, and they fall fast asleep. I could not rouse them. Now I definitely could not go for help. The jaguars have given up subtlety and are practically tramping on the feet of the children. One bent down slowly, but his eyes looking in mine, clamped a child by the foot in his jaws and slowly began to drag him away. I had never killed anything larger than a cockroach in my life, but I couldn't hesitate. I grabbed a burning log and let it fall crashing over his head. The cat dropped the child and rolled over, dead. Just then I noticed the poisonous snake, a toad-headed pit viper, crawling from our fire. I turned and hit that too. But with the first blow, it turned into a log. Then, he was there and said he would help us for a while, but then F and I really must go to the other mountain. I wanted us all to get up to the village right away and aggressively. Another family came down the path, the man even had a gun. They chatted in their language. Tell them to help us. I frantically command, probably in English. Two of the kids decide to stay with us, to my dismay. We are going back up the sacred mountain. Now. He commanded, despite my protests. His insistent and sincere expression puts the thought to my mind, again, that this isn't real. All I have to do is pass some test, I think. I should respect those who try and teach me. So I could go back to the hammocks on the mountain, trust his judgment, and get a good grade on this test. But if it is real, the wrong decision is life and death. And the children? I ask. They must learn to have no fear, too. Let them learn, he says. I can't leave them. I knew that fearlessness was only one factor in winning a battle against the jaguars. So I'd fail the test and look silly. I knew no martial arts, could hardly sheath a knife, and really abhorred the idea of killing anything. But I would not leave the children. I'm not going, I said harshly. Then, please, stay, we need you. You must be calm and unafraid, he tells me. I'm not scared or frantic. I just can't protect these sleeping children in this poor hut. My eyes are going dim, I reply. In fact, the only thing I could see were the black jaguars. They were splotches of darkness blacker than black with brilliant eyes. I sat down finally on a hammock. The cats watched us, but did nothing. Some of them rarely moved. I did not move. E told me F and I must go back up the mountain. I refuse. I convince E to sit for a while on the other end of my hammock, trying to keep him there. And thus began the waiting. The cats would hardly move, inching forward so slowly, then pounce. For some reason, they attacked more where I had a body part out of my blanket. And they attacked me the most. I would stay under the blanket as long as possible. Sometimes, I heard E frantically crying, "Cover up! Cover up!" I would throw the blanket over my head and he would beat the jaguar back. After a long time of this, we were very tired. He began snoring and I couldn't wake him up sometimes. The cats seemed to tire out, too. Then my account goes into phrases that make no sense at all for a few pages, and then it starts making sense, but I switch to referring to myself in third person. The account continues for 20-ish pages, filled with detailed experiences that I live over the next 2 days. Sometimes, I refer to myself in third person, sometimes even as he instead of she. Sometimes I lapse into nonsense phrases or Spanish. After a few days, I realized that although I had thought during the whole experience that the plant had not worked, I had actually entered a deep schizophrenic psychosis. I had no idea I was hallucinating as everything seemed completely real to me. According to E, I had to be tied up as I was violently roaming the mountaintop, convinced I was saving children from stalking jaguars. I also had been attacking logs with burning sticks, convinced they were vipers. One time, I escaped and they found me standing in the middle of the fire we kept going on the mountaintop. Miraculously, I was not burned. For 2 days, I answered everything in English, convinced I was speaking Spanish. They would tell me in Spanish that they could not understand me when I spoke English, and I would get annoyed telling them I was speaking Spanish. Though I was not. When I wrote this account days later, I could still barely see, and reading some of the nonsense I wrote, I was still not all there. I was shocked to learn that Makuya was Brugmansia and probably would have never agreed to go on that vision quest had I known at that time. However, I was about as prepared as you can be. I was psychologically, emotionally, and physically trained by indigenous healers with over 40 years of experience. It is against their tradition to speak against your visions. Therefore, when I asked the shaman, for example, if he saw the jaguars I saw, he would reply yes and ask me if I was afraid. I would reply no. Their culture believes this plant helps the prepared person conquer their fear as they combat enemies in visions that last for days. I always had two sitters, really guides that would ask me about my visions and ask me about my fear of whatever I saw. If I had not been with these guides, I probably would have lost my mind, especially over the next few days, as I began to weave back and forth between lucidity and insanity without my vision. But they taught me to be calm and to fight any bad vision as if it were a real enemy. I took a dosage prepared by someone with dozens of years of experience, fortunately, as this stuff can kill you or land you in a psych ward. Even one of his relatives lost his mind for 2 weeks and wandered off in the jungle, lost for almost a month. I am grateful for what I learned but would never ever do this again. You go completely schizophrenic. It is not like a normal hallucinogen that makes you see your friend's face melt off or makes you see squiggly lines in the wallpaper. You are totally immersed in a convincing alternate reality while your body here on Earth crashes around violently, hurting yourself, your surroundings, and even the people around you. I respect the indigenous cultures who use the plant spiritually, but even they do not do it more than a few times in their life. It is the most powerful plant they know. Never mistake this plant for a recreational drug.
Recently I acquired 10 grams of shredded Brugmansia, and having a gap between studies, wanted to try it out. Having experimented with a wide range of chemicals, psychedelics in particular, I was intrigued by what a deliriant hallucinogen had to offer. I had experienced a threshold dose of Datura previous to this a few years ago, but I wanted to push the boat out a bit. 2 good friends would be taking this journey with me. I had very recently turned my friends onto the wonders of psychedelic chemicals, LSD, mescaline and mushrooms, which they had dug a lot. Besides that, we drink, and smoke my homegrown ganja fairly often. To prepare the concoction I simply boiled a kettle, let it sit for a while, and then poured the still hot water into a cup with the shredded Brugmansia flowers. There were just under 3, as I had smoked some of the material previously. This was stirred occasionally, the water was allowed to cool, and then the potion was filtered with kitchen roll. The resulting dark brown liquid was a lot less offensive to the palate than ayahuasca, but here was something evil about it. This was split 3 ways and rapidly downed. We also took a few caps of dream herb, Callias to aid the dream effects of the Brugmansia. I wasn't sure what to expect if anything. After a while of nothing happening, we all realized that we were actually very sizzled, in a weird way. A bit of a stoned feeling, but also like an alcohol intoxication, very different to a psychedelic. Although not the most pleasant sort of intoxication, it really wasn't that bad either. On standing the effects were even more apparent, in that it was hard to walk. After a joint, we retired to bed. This is when it really started to get weird. Although I felt very tired, I couldn't sleep for a long time. Later, I fell into some kind of dream or hallucinatory state. This was strange. I had forgotten I had taken something, and for the life of me couldn't tell whether I was awake or dreaming for the entire night. Things that had been on my mind earlier would surface in my dreams/visions. I had long in-depth talks to both of my friends, who sat on the end of my bed. Of course, they were only in my mind. Both my friends reported the same thing on waking. I've been trying to induce lucid dreams recently, and several times I became lucid, realizing I was dreaming but not that I was intoxicated on Brugmansia. Several times I woke up and no idea where I was, or thought I was sleeping at the other end of my bed for some reason. I had a long lie in and on waking didn't feel bad at all. Both of my friends had also had a strange night, filled with vivid, waking dreams. The vivid dreams continued in the second night. The next day I felt fine, but not sober. My friends were the same. Trying to study was a fruitless exercise. My friend said that when intoxicated his nerves felt excited and energized, and he would like to have hit something. I recall feared warriors somewhere in South America using this plant before battle. For the next few days a weird side effect was noticed by all of us. We couldn't focus on anything near to our eyes, so reading was made difficult. I was glad to have a breakthrough experience with the Brugmansia. It was less of an ordeal than I expected it to be from reports, and the dream state was interesting. I don't think I have any desire to repeat the experience though, having done it. Maybe sometime in the future. This plant definitely has a more toxic, threatening vibe than the psychedelics. I can see this plant would change the nature of ayahuasca dramatically if used in preparation. One Saturday night, me and my roommate decided to try Brugmansia again. We had previously tried it, but only half a small flower each, and the effects were not too intense. We just felt a bit uncoordinated and heavy. This time, we decided to do it for real. We got 4 flowers, maybe 8 to 10 inches each, from a plant we knew of to share between the two of us. I was a veteran of psychedelics, so I didn't anticipate any real problems. I knew that I would never hallucinate enough to present a real danger to myself or others. So we began to make the tea. I put 4 flowers into about 1 liter of boiling water. After 5 minutes or so, I took out the flowers and put a bunch of sugar and lemon juice in the liquid to make it taste better. We poured out 2 mugs, and each drank one. This was around 11:30 p.m. There was still about 350 milliliters left in the pot, but we couldn't bring ourselves to finish the rest. 10 to 15 minutes later, I started to feel pretty uncomfortable. Moving around presented a real problem, and my body felt really heavy. I was a bit nauseous, so I tried to limit my movement as much as possible. We popped in a DVD, but I hardly remember any of it. By this time, we were feeling pretty sleepy. My roommate just went to bed right away, and I went upstairs to my room. I tried to finish the movie upstairs, but kept falling asleep, so I went to play on my computer. That's one of the last things I remember. That whole time, I didn't notice myself thinking any differently. I just felt uncoordinated, heavy, and dizzy. I do remember that I still had my contacts on and made a conscious decision to just go take a nap with them on. I'm still trying to figure out if I took a shower or not. I believe I just washed my face, brushed my teeth, put my phone on the charger, and went to bed. As far as I remember, I went to bed without consequence a little after 1 a.m. The weirdness didn't manifest until I woke up. I woke up around 10:30 a.m., really confused for a moment. I didn't know where I was, and I was on the other side of my bed. I almost never wake up on the other side of the bed. I decided to just lay there for a moment before I got up. The first really weird thing was that I heard the noise of running water. It sounded like it was coming from my bathroom, which was connected to my room, but I somehow convinced myself that it was just coming from my computer. Then, I heard a loud crash near my bed, which prompted me to get up and see what the matter was. I looked around my bed and didn't see anything that could have caused that crash. I walked over to the bathroom and found myself staring at a complete mess. I looked back at my room, and it was in complete disarray. The strange thing was that the mess wasn't just random and chaotic, it was like someone deliberately moved things around my room and put them in weird places to play a prank on me. I have 2 sinks in my bathroom, and the first thing I noticed was that one of the water faucets was running. I turned it off and took another look at the bathroom area. I was so sure that one of my roommates had played a prank on me while I was sleeping. Here's what I found. 2 shirt hangers from my closet, 1 on each water faucet. The shirts that were on these hangers were found around my room. My hair wax container with the lid removed. I later found the lid under one corner of my bed. My contact lens bottle, moved from the medicine cabinet to my desk in my room. The cap remained in the medicine cabinet. My contact lens case. One side of the case was filled with hair wax, like someone used the case to scoop out hair wax. The caps to the case were on the bathroom counter. Even though I don't remember taking off my contacts, I found my contacts dried up, 1 in the sink, and 1 on the counter. What kind of mean prank is this? A Clorox cleanup spray bottle. The bottle was lying on its side on my counter, but the spray part was unscrewed and placed near my computer. My swimming goggles, out of the case, on top of the spray bottle. They were in a plastic case, along with my nose clip, but I have yet to find those. My glasses, on top of my shower sliding door. This area is quite narrow. my toothbrush, on the other side of the counter that I never use, and my toothpaste lying near it. My swim cap, moved from a towel rack in the bathroom, to the middle of the floor in my room. My swimming trunks, moved from the shower door to my bed. My laundry basket, moved from inside my walk-in closet to near the bed, with my towel, that was in the bathroom, rolled up neatly inside, as well as a magazine inside. Toilet paper rolls, about 2 of them, on my sink counter. Paper towel roll, with the paper towels wrapped around just the middle of it, on my counter. My shorts hanging off my guitar. My room fan, turned off, I always leave it on a clean bowl in the middle of the carpet in my room. Small tissue paper squares, found all over my room, in random places. My back scratcher, which I had lost a couple days ago, lying neatly in front of my keyboard on my desk. I then went to my computer to see if anyone pranked it as well. I found a bunch of random browser windows open, some random text in some windows, and my away message on AIM was changed to my default working away message. A few really important directories were also deleted, and I had to get them out of the recycle bin. By this time, I had cleaned up most of the mess, and was ready to go downstairs and ask my roommate about this great prank I thought he pulled. There were still 3 things I couldn't find in my room though. My toilet paper roll holder, my swimming nose clip, and my cell phone. I went downstairs and asked my roommate if he messed up my room. He had no idea what I was talking about. He was sleeping the whole time, and only got up to go to the bathroom. I asked my other roommate, and she also had no idea what I was talking about. At this point I was really confused, and after much debate, we came to the conclusion that I had done it myself. I almost refused to believe it, as I had zero recollection of doing any of these things. I tried to imagine myself doing those things, but it didn't trigger any memories or anything. I decided to stop thinking for a while and look for the missing things. The first thing I found was my toilet paper roll holder. It was near the stairway, in a piece of rolled-up carpet that was lying on a tall box. This was extremely bizarre, because this was a very intentional placement of something, and in order to do this, one would have to lean over the stairway, and place it in the rolled-up carpet. Then I asked my roommates to call my phone. I finally found it. The phone was placed in the pocket of a pair of pants that I hadn't worn, and the pants were rolled up, and placed behind a bunch of garbage bags, in a storage cupboard near my bathroom. That made absolutely no sense to me. As I thought more and more about it, I only vaguely remember 3 things that made me realize that I could have trashed my own room. I remember walking, and accidentally kicking the bowl that was in the middle of my room. This seemed normal to me at the time, for a bowl to be chilling in the middle of my room. The second thing I vaguely remember was putting my glasses on top of the shower sliding door. These aren't very clear memories either. They seem more like 2-second scenes from a dream that I all but forgot about. The last thing I barely remember was my hair wax in my contact lens case, and me tasting/eating the wax. I'm still not sure if I actually did that, but I have an extremely faint memory of doing so. Even though this was pretty funny after the fact, the scary thing about it all was that I had no recollection of doing these things. These things were not rational at all, and made absolutely no sense. Was I trying to play a prank on myself? Was I just doing these things because I thought each act had some sort of significance? Did I have a valid reason to do these things at the time? Did I do anything stupid, like eat hair wax, chug down Clorox cleaning solution? I'm only relieved that I didn't do something worse, like cut off my penis or my tongue. Based on the fact that I had absolutely no control over what I did, and that the things I did were totally irrational and not like myself, my official recommendation is not to do Brugmansia, even if you think you can control yourself on it. If you absolutely must try it, be sure you have a sober sitter that will be with you the entire time it takes for you to become sober. Other trip reports will confirm the bizarre nature of this drug. Be aware. I am a 22-year-old male, and live in Australia. First heard of Datura roughly 5 years ago from friends. Also heard a little about Datura on the news with only info about its dangers. I knew it was a shrub or tree with green leaves and white or yellow trumpet-shaped flowers, but not a lot more than that. Just recently something sparked my interest about the plant. What it was I'm still not sure, but I became incredibly fascinated with the plant and began researching information about it on the internet. After researching a heap of info from several websites, I found this one to be the most accurate and best explained. I read all the experience stories about Datura and Brugmansia on this site, and even with all the negative information surrounding the plants I was still very keen to try it. At the time I was intensely depressed with no friends and no girlfriend, no fear about anything, so deciding to experiment with this plant was an easy decision. I knew I had previously seen this plant not far from where I live, however it wasn't until a few days ago that I remembered its location. It was growing in a national park, just off the side of a dirt track, and was the species known as Brugmansia, also commonly known as tree Datura and angel's trumpet. The tree didn't look too healthy and most of its whitish-yellowed color flowers had fallen on the ground. I picked some branches and flowers off the tree, which surprisingly broke away very easily. I then drove home, turned on the stove, poured 2 cups of water in a small pot, washed and then mashed up a handful of the leaves, stems and 1 flower in my hands and placed them in the pot just as the water was starting to boil. I then began stirring and pressing the tree pieces with a wooden spoon. After about 2 minutes the water started changing to a light yellow color, and in 10 minutes the color looked similar to that of chamomile tea. After boiling for 10 minutes I drained the yellow-colored liquid into a standard size cup, by tilting the pot on its side while holding the tree contents in the pot with a fork and slowly drained the liquid in the cup. I then threw out the mushy tree bits in the pot, and was ready to drink the awful-smelling yellow liquid left in the cup. Can't really describe the smell. I suppose if you were to boil cabbage and seaweed together it would smell similar, but I've never tried that. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath and drank a mouthful of the tea. To my surprise the taste was not as bad as the smell. I mean it was still awful but nothing as bad as I had expected. I took another couple of mouthfuls, and then remembering what I read about on the web, people taking too much and all that, I decided not to drink anymore and just wait to see how the dose would affect me. I experienced a severe dry throat, blurry vision, severe at close range, extreme drowsiness with my legs feeling like lead weights were attached to them, a little off balance when walking, but not dizzy in the head, a little spacey, and my pupils were widely dilated. And that's all I experienced. No dreams, no delirium, no hallucinations, no memory loss, no wild times, nothing. I was severely disappointed with the whole experience. So 2 days later, with my vision still blurry and pupils still widely dilated, I decided to take a larger dose. I did the same preparation as 2 days ago, but this time instead of drinking just a few mouthfuls I drank almost a full cup of the tea. Nothing happened for about 1 hour, and then suddenly, it came on, and it came on fast, a lot faster than before. Suddenly my throat was severely dry, and the symptoms I had 2 days ago returned, except this time I wasn't drowsy. I was sitting down watching TV at the time and decided to get up for a glass of water, but when I stood up my legs wouldn't work and I fell down. It was as if they had gone to sleep. I tried picking myself up off the floor and then discovered that it wasn't just my legs but my arms had also gone to sleep, and it took all my effort just to get back on the couch. At this stage I knew I had taken too much and tried to feel my heart beating, but couldn't feel anything. Now just when I think things couldn't get worse, my parents came home. They came into the living room where I was watching TV, but I was still in control enough to play it straight. They said a few words like, "What are you doing?" and I told them that I was watching TV, but before they could question me any further the phone rang. I was safe for a little while. My dad talked on the phone. At this stage my mouth was so dry I knew I wouldn't be able to talk again without a glass of water and decided to make a try for the bathroom while my parents were occupied with the phone call. When I got off the couch I fell down again, but somehow managed to pick myself up and staggered to the bathroom. Now the effects started intensifying. The ground felt like it was starting to move and I felt extremely dizzy, and for the first time through this whole experience I began to feel like puking. After managing to get a drink of water from the bathroom sink I tried to check my pupils in the mirror but couldn't see them because my vision was so blurry. I started crawling to my bedroom. The loss of body control was horrible. I almost felt paralyzed, and I can only describe the feeling as being like having pins and needles over your whole body but 20 times worse. As I crawled along the floor, I began having trouble breathing, taking very deep and loud breaths, like gasping for air. Also my face felt very cold and flushed, and I began to feel extremely faint. It was at this point my mom spotted me crawling along the floor and knew something was wrong. I don't remember exactly what I said, but told my mom I had eaten a poisonous plant, and need a hospital quickly. Within seconds she was somehow able to pick me up off the floor and helped me to walk outside towards my parents' car. Everything looked as if it was so far away and had the appearance of moving like jelly on a plate. Fortunately I only lived 5 minutes away from the hospital, and when I arrived there I informed the doctors that I had consumed the poisonous plant named Datura. To my sheer disbelief no one in the hospital knew of the plant. What kind of doctors were these? The doctors actually had to phone the Poisons Information Center for information about how to treat me. I couldn't believe it. These were doctors working in one of the largest hospitals in Australia and yet they knew nothing about Datura. Anyway, they rushed me to intensive care, took blood and hooked me up to a heart monitoring machine. Apparently my heart rate was 170 BPM. I remember continually passing out and the doctor shaking me and saying, "Do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is? Do you know your name?" At this point I lost my memory. The following is what my parents said happened. My eyes were continually rolling back in my head. Doctors put a drip in my arm. I tried to get out of bed and had to be held down several times. Then the doctors realized that I would respond to any command, like in a hypnotic trance. They would say lay back down, and I would immediately lay back down. They would say drink this and I would immediately drink. So restraints were not necessary. I was also told I would constantly say things that made sense but had no meaning. Things like, "I'm just going over to Allison's place, be back soon." I don't remember any of that. I thought I had passed out but was told my eyes were open the whole time. They gave me liquid charcoal to drink to absorb the poison in my stomach, and about 1 hour later my heart rate dropped to 100 BPM. I was released from hospital later that night and went home feeling much better thinking it was all over, but Datura had not finished with me yet. That night I went to sleep but was awoken several times thinking I was playing with something in bed but then it would disappear and for a few minutes I would search my bed looking for it. People came into my room and would then disappear. My mom came into my room and gave me a bowl of soup to eat and when I had almost finished it the bowl and spoon would disappear and I would search my bed looking for it. My mom came back in my room and I would talk to her, and then, she disappeared. Note, as soon as things disappeared I knew they were hallucinations. Then I thought I had dropped a lit cigarette in my bed and woke up my dad to help me find it. I know this wasn't a dream because my dad confirmed this the next day. The next day I woke up feeling normal except my vision remained blurry at close range for 1 week. When I read all the experience stories about Datura and Brugmansia on this site, a few stories I didn't believe, and thought the majority of them were exaggerated. I couldn't have been more wrong. All the Datura stories here are so exactly like what I experienced that it's scary, to think one plant can give identical effects to such a wide variety of people around the world. Don't play games with Datura because it will fuck you. And fuck you. And fuck you. And just when you think it's all over, that's when the real fucking starts.